Welcome everybody back to the Gaming Graveyard. Today we'll be covering Splash Damage and Bethesda's first-person multiplayer shooter, Brink. Brink, unlike other games, wasn't killed off by stupid decisions during development or absolutely nonsensical publisher demands, but instead by unreachable expectations that were put on the game during its marketing. So without further ado, let's get into the intriguing story of how Brink became one of the most forgotten games in the gaming industry. Splash Damage would be founded in 2001. For most of their early history, they would be pretty much a one-trick pony. They were really good at making multiplayer modes for single-player games. More specifically than that, they were really good at making id Software single-player games into multiplayer games. From their founding in 2001 all the way to 2007, the only games they would work on were multiplayer modes for id Software. These would include Return to Castle Wolfenstein's multiplayer, as well as the open-source Wolfenstein game that was initially planned to include a single player, but eventually with the single player troubles and the single player really not coming together, they eventually decided to just release it as freeware. This has become known as Wolfenstein Enemy Territory. Both of these Wolfenstein multiplayers have become something of a cult classic, with many seeing these as having some of the best first-person multiplayer gameplay you can find in a video game. Eventually, id Software trusted Splash Damage enough with their growing reputation due to their very solid work to work on their very own game, which would be dubbed Enemy Territory Quake Wars. It was the first time Splash Damage would work on their very own game. Not just a component of a game, but a full-fledged game. Quake Wars would quickly become praised as one of the final good Quake games that was released by id Software, even winning some awards for how good it truly was. This success quickly launched Splash Damage into the eyes of multiple publishers, but of course, the greasy hands of Bethesda were the first to make their move. As around this time, in and around 2007, Bethesda had quickly risen to becoming one of the largest publishers in the gaming industry. Bethesda and Splash Damage announced their partnership in 2008 as a long-term agreement between both companies. The president of Bethesda Softworks would go on to say this about the agreement: "This could not be a more perfect fit. We are extremely impressed with Splash Damage and the quality titles they produce. They are highly creative and innovative, and have demonstrated a high level of dedication to their projects. We are confident that gamers everywhere will be thrilled with the offerings from this collaboration." Pretty quickly, you can kind of get the feeling that Bethesda felt that they were onto something here. Now, I can't confirm this, obviously, but from everything I've read from Bethesda about this agreement, it felt like Bethesda's feelings about this agreement was that they struck gold. They picked up a young, thriving developer that they could pluck and pluck and pluck for millions of dollars, which is already a bad start, especially because they wanted Splash Damage to be working on their first ever original IP. The pressure on Splash Damage had already begun, the expectations were already building, and oh yeah, they were only going to get worse. Brink would be officially revealed in 2009. Publicly, they were not releasing a release date, but internally they were hoping for a spring 2009. And yeah, very quickly they found out that this was not going to be happening, and the game would quickly slip to 2010. Brink's marketing was always a little confusing. While internally it was always being planned to be a multiplayer game first, with a little bit of story elements being sewn in, and they were always planning on using in-game dialogue to tell most of the story. Publicly, many assumed that, well, because of the partnership with Bethesda, it was going to be a story game first, with multiplayer being sewn in at the end. The trailers also didn't help with this confusion, as the trailers, of course, like every multiplayer game, pushed more narrative into the game than there was ever going to be. So from the get-go, there was a big misunderstanding from the public of what Brink was supposed to be. There was sky-high expectations from Bethesda on what they wanted from Splash Damage, and Splash Damage themselves had no experience with their own IP, and they were probably going to be quite new to figuring out all the problems that come from making your own IP. Brink would also be releasing on the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the PC. The reason why this is problematic is that Brink would be running on id Tech 4, which was primarily developed for PCs, and Splash Damage to that point had only worked with consoles on one other game. So development was going to be rather slow until they fully figured out all the nooks and crannies of id Tech 4 and fully got everything up to speed. Brink's 2010 release date would not happen, and it would be eventually pushed to 2011, with a more concrete release date being given later in 2010 as May 10th, 10th, 2011. The delay never really got a reasoning other than, guys, we did it, and yeah, we are going to never talk about it. Bethesda essentially just pretended as if the 2010 release date was totally never going to happen and the 2011 was always the plan. Brink's 2011 release date would happen and Brink would hit store shelves on May 10th, 2011. Brink's narrative was rather unoriginal if we're going to be honest, and due to a lack of story mode, many just simply didn't care enough to look into it. The actual gameplay itself was praised for being unique, fast, and having a lot of parkourish features that did bring a lot of fun. Eurogamer would have this to say about Brink at launch: an exceptional team shooter, smart, supremely well balanced, and with a unique, exciting art style. Even with that praise, Eurogamer criticized it for feeling unpolished and unfinished, which was the consensus that a ton of players had. Simply put, Brink was missing content. Once you got to a level ceiling, there was nothing else for you to do. You essentially beat a multiplayer game. You could of course continue playing, but there is really no benefit in doing so. And the gameplay was quite repetitive, meaning there was no real reason to continue playing the game after that point. So many just simply didn't. Within months, Brink bled players. It was down and down every single month. Although a DLC would be released in the same year Brink was released, it didn't do much to save the player base, which by this point had diminished so far that Bethesda and Splash Damage mutually agreed to abandon the game. Brink's death may feel unsatisfying for a lot of you watching this video. It may feel like I rushed to the end of this video, but I truly didn't. There just was nothing else to cover. The marketing was rather non-existent, and when the game finally did come out, it just didn't have enough content to keep players interested on a long-term basis. In the end, Splash Damage would move on. They would make the spiritual successor to Brink, which would also it would flop pretty hard, let's be completely real. Dirty Bomb. It was not very good. It was basically the same exact game with the same exact problems, so that's not great. Today, Splash Damage is still alive and kicking. They're still releasing games and still hoping to release more to the masses. And you know who still is also alive? Yeah, Bethesda. Oh, and Brink. Yeah, Brink's still alive. You can play it to this day free on Steam. Although you probably won't find anybody actually playing the game, you can at least boot it up. Thank you all for watching. I'm sorry this video may not be as long, but it is honestly just me taking a chance and trying to do new stuff on the side. I've been trying a ton of new content. I've been scrapping a ton of videos. I just truly don't know what I want to do yet, and I'm still trying to figure everything out. So thank you all for watching. This will most likely be a very, very, very consistent amount of videos coming out because I have so many videos I've been working on that I've been scrapping, redoing. I'm expecting a whole lot of content to be coming out this week and next week that'll pretty much vary from completely different stuff. I'm going to be starting a new series. I'm going to be releasing another gaming graveyard video. I'm going to be doing so much content, so just prepare yourselves because a lot is about to drop. So without further ado, have a good one. I'll see ya.